are back on Inside Politics. Our guest today, Dr. Thomas Schwartz, a history professor at Vanderbilt University, who has recently written a new book on Henry Kissinger, a biography. Dr. Schwartz, I think perhaps early on in his term with Richard Nixon as National Security Advisor, a lot of problems getting the North Vietnamese peace accord finally get together. They couldn't agree about what's the size of the table they were going to negotiate on. There were a lot more bombing and things like that. It seemed that Lyndon Johnson's war was becoming Richard Nixon's war. What was the problem in those early years to get anything done in Vietnam?
Well, I think that the Nixon administration came in thinking that it could solve the Vietnam problem with a policy similar to what Dwight Eisenhower had done in the Korean War, namely to threaten the use of force and get the Soviet Union to force North Vietnam to talk seriously about peace. Problem is, the strategic situation had changed decisively, and even though Nixon and Kissinger tried to use the Soviet Union to pressure North Vietnam, that failed miserably. The Soviets were unwilling to put pressure on North Vietnam. North Vietnam was unwilling to listen, and the result was that they ended up deciding on a Vietnamization program of withdrawing troops and trying to get negotiations going, but it would take almost 4 years.
Finally, in 1972 and 73, Henry Kissinger and President Nixon sort of hit the trifecta, or maybe even more than that. They had achievements in Russia, China, Vietnam, and in the Middle East. President Nixon ultimately won re-election easily in 1972, but might it have been a lot more difficult for him to win without the progress that Dr. Kissinger made in so many foreign policy areas in that election year of 1972?
I think so. I mean, obviously you can't run history and see it, and there are probably political scientists out there who would immediately say to me, no, it was the economy. But I do think Richard Nixon believed strongly that foreign policy success would contribute to domestic political support. And that was one of his main efforts. And that's how he used Henry Kissinger basically to try and get those foreign policy successes, particularly China and the Soviet Union, and eventually the Vietnam War.
The most, perhaps most famous public policy moment for Henry Kissinger was the Nixon go to China trip. It was an unexpected move that they even used that phrase, Nixon to China, to describe some surprise development in politics. The trip to China occurred after Dr. Kissinger made several secret trips to China. How did he do that without it leaking out, and could that even be possible in today's media world?
Well, I think it would have been almost impossible. He made one trip, really, that was the central one, and it was they had to use a lot of deception. One of the wonderful things about the Vanderbilt Television News Archive is you can see how completely the media was fooled. They even ran a story about Kissinger suffering from stomach upset in Pakistan when he was really on the way to Beijing for the meeting with Zhou Enlai. So yes, they did manage, and it's really quite fascinating that they could have gotten away with it, but it does say something about the media world of that time and the degree to which it was possible to carry out secret missions and the rest at that period of time.
Our relationship with China is probably at its lowest ebb since we reopened relationship, maybe since back in the days of the deep Cold War, right after the Chinese took over there and the communists did in 1949. The current Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, has been particularly critical. There's, of course, been the trade war pressure, the Chinese movements at oceans around Southeast Asia, and, of course, the virus pandemic that started in China. Is the door to open better relationships by Kissinger now being closed as China is perhaps becoming our biggest rival and perhaps soon our biggest enemy?
Well, Kissinger has been quoted as saying that he thinks we are in the foothills of a Cold War with China. He doesn't want to see that. He does still believe in cooperation and believes that the United States and China can resolve their differences or at least manage their differences. And I think in this sense, it may be we are heading for a more testy relationship with China. But I think the question, Kissinger always believed that China obviously was a significant power and that the United States needed to recognize that. The question of whether he was too active in promoting or facilitating China's rise is, of course, one of the controversies around him. But I think his case would now be that we need to step back and remember that we do have some mutual interest with China, particularly in the world economy and other areas.
The word shuttle diplomacy was coined under Henry Kissinger when he went back and forth in the Middle East in the Yom Kippur War back in the early 70s. Such negotiations to get peace have been continued under every American president. Most recently, President Trump, with Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, have been able to get 2 treaties signed by smaller countries in the Arab world who recognize Israel. Are these significant events, and what role do you think Dr. Kissinger played in bringing this about?
Well, we don't know. We do know from Michael Wolff's actually reporting that Jared Kushner respects Henry Kissinger and is to him. Kissinger may have encouraged this type of reconciliation and trying to bring it out and changing the issues of the Middle East. In Kissinger's time, the questions were different. They were connected not only to simply Israel's survival, but also to the oil embargo of the time, trying to end that, which had had such terrible consequences for the American economy. So if he has been advising Kushner, it may be that he has been indicating that maybe there are possibilities to pursue Middle East peace in a different manner now.
As we get ready to close, as you look at this book after you finished it, where do you put Henry Kissinger, the overall pantheon of our greatest secretaries of state? Many of our secretaries of state early on became presidents right after that. Is Dr. Kissinger going to be better known in the future for being Super K, as he was known back in the 70s, or as some pejoratively say, he's the 20th century's best 19th century statesman?
It's complicated because I do think a balance on Henry Kissinger will take time. Even now, I am modest enough, I think, to say that my book is a contribution to understanding him, but that there will be continuing argument about the type of foreign policy he encouraged in the world order he did. I think it can be said that he was probably one of the most consequential secretaries of state we have had, and that is, I think, a significant aspect of
Dr.
his role.
Schwartz, thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations on the book. I'm sure people can find it in the usual online situations today, but again, we appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
That's Inside Politics for this week. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you'll be back here again for a future show. If you can't get enough politics in the meantime, go to the News Channel 5 website. You'll find my Capitol View commentary there. There's new commentary posted every Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you here next time. Goodbye.